Hello and welcome to a video on how to create dynamically generated Bootstrap alerts. There are many YouTube videos online already that show how to display an alert and how to hide an alert, but a lot of these are only showing how to kind of display and hide and dismiss existing hard-coded tags that are already in page. The main problem with this is you're then stuck with generic alerts and they all have to be included in the page and then shown and dismissed as needed. What we want is dynamically generated alerts that will be created based on events with useful information for the user so that we can get better feedback and better user-server communication. So to do this, we are going to start out much like the other tutorials, just looking at how to get an alert on the page. But this is a lot simpler than people make it seem. The first thing we need to do is include the libraries. So we need Bootstrap and jQuery. That's all we're going to use. For that, we've got this Bootstrap. We're going to use Bootstrap version 4.6. And this includes the jQuery because Bootstrap relies on jQuery. So here we have the Bootstrap CSS. We can include that, like so. Then we want the jQuery and Bootstrap JavaScript, like so. One thing we do need to change though is we don't want the slim version because that doesn't include all the functions we're going to use. And because we've changed the file, this integrity attribute isn't going to work, so we get rid of that. And that should be us good to go. Right, let's now just get a basic page going so that we can see this works. I'm just going to call it header, very imaginative, I know. I'm using Spring Boot on the back end, by the way. This isn't really relevant. You can use whatever you want. I'm not going to go into any back end coding. It's just we're doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript only. This is from an earlier demo, so ignore that. Header, that's what we want. So we're loading the page, hopefully we're loading the libraries as well, and maybe if we were to stick this into a container, a Bootstrap container, that is, then we can confirm that we've got Bootstrap running, but we're not going to reload that yet. Now we want an alert from Bootstrap. We're going to copy this part of the page. You scroll all the way to the end. It's one of the last examples with an actual displayed element. What we're looking for is it to have color in it, to have this bold but colored section, and also dismissible cross on it. And it says Holy Guacamole. We're pasting that in. This is pre-canned alert, and it should be basically aesthetically what you already want. If not, you can play around with that. You can watch other videos on how to style it, change it, move it around, all these kinds of things, but we're not going to go into that. I'm assuming this is exactly what you want and how it's going to look. If not, you can deal with that yourself. So we're going to reload and show the alert on page. So here we have an alert. It fills the whole thing because it's not in a container. We're going to dismiss it with that cross. And then we're actually going to, the container's obviously working, but alert wouldn't have worked if we didn't have Bootstrap anyway, so that was kind of a pointless exercise. However, we're going to now put this inside a container so that it looks slightly nicer, and we're going to call this container, give it an ID of alert container. This isn't a Bootstrap thing, this is just a name I'm giving it. And we're going to also give an ID to this alert and call it alert template. Again, nothing to do with Bootstrap, that's just a name I'm giving it. And we don't want this default text in here, we want our own text. So we're going to put in a span because there's no new line, and then it doesn't mess with the cross coming out of the box and things like that, so span. And we're going to give this a class of alert message. Again, not a Bootstrap thing, this is a name I've come up with myself. And we're going to put unchanged in here, just so that we know this is the templated version. And let's just reload and make sure that's all working. We don't want to stack too many changes and then not know why things aren't working. So there we go. We have an alert. It's inside a container because you can see it's padded. It's got the new text that we put in, and again, we can still dismiss it. So it's all working nicely. Now, we don't really want this template displaying on screen because we don't just want an alert when we load the page. We don't want no alerts, and then when there is something to say to the user, we display an alert. And when we click that cross, it's actually deleted from the DOM. So as a template in page, we kind of need that to stay there because we can't use the template if it disappears. So we don't actually want to ever see or interact with this. And for that, we're going to use the Bootstrap class d-none, which basically just sets a CSS property display with a value of none. So it's just not on page. Then, nice, create some nice script tags here. And we're going to clone this. So we're going to call this new element our new alert. And we're going to say get the alert template node and clone it. And then to the alert container, we are going to append this new alert. Oh, for God's sake. Let's just make sure that works. We should still just see an alert, and it will just look like... it won't actually, will it? Because it still has d-none. So that's one of the most important things I forgot to mention. So we're going to remove the class d-none. Remove class d-none. Now it should display. There we go. Now that is a dynamically created and displayed alert. And it's fairly easy to manipulate it from here. One thing that we would want to do next, obviously, is create our own messages. And that's achieved by just changing the contents of the alert message span. So we'll say new alert, children, so that's all of its children tags inside, and we'll filter by the class alert message. And then we'll set the HTML to changed in caps because we're excited about the change. So let's refresh that. And we have an error. I've done a typo, which you probably already saw. It's always frustrating when you see somebody making an error they don't see. Hopefully we caught it. There we go. Now we have its changed. So we've set that in code in JavaScript. So that's a dynamically generated message in an alert that we've displayed on screen with code. Now that alert wouldn't be there without running the JavaScript. That message wouldn't be what it is without the JavaScript. So we now have the building blocks of dynamicness. So obviously anything done in JavaScript we can use in a dynamic way in any event-driven situation. So one thing we also want to be able to do is change the color. So we're probably going to have warnings, errors, success messages, things like that. So let's try success messages. So for that we want to remove this alert-warning, which is what's currently styling it and making it yellow. And then here in our code, we're going to add a class. Alert success, which is a Bootstrap class, which will make it green. Huzzah, that's exactly what we want. And then to make this slightly more interesting, let's call this show alert, just so that we can just call the function from now on instead of having to copy this code wherever we want to use it. And then we're going to put in some AJAX. And I've got just a quick pre-written here so that I don't have to bore you with typing that out. This is the basic structure of a AJAX call in jQuery. I'm going to put our URL wibble, which is something we've already coded. We'll show you that quickly. This is in Spring Boot. That's the URL definition, and we're basically saying we're generating a random number, and if it's less than 0.5, it's between 0 and 1. If it's less than 0.5, we'll give it success. If it's above 0.5, we're going to throw an exception, which will cause an error. And that allows us to call this or this function, just for the purposes of this demo. So here we're going to say show alert, and unsurprisingly, here we're also going to say show alert. So now in any situation, we will have this changed called. Or reload, and we can see in the network tab that wibble was called. We had a 500 internal server error, so we had an exception thrown, and it's caused this to come on screen. Actually, yes, that's what happened. Now, if we were to put some parameters into this function, so message and type, for example, we could then set this to message and this to type, so that we can say success and actually success, because we want alert dash success as the class. And here we're going to say error, bad, and we're going to say danger, because there is a class called alert dash danger, which makes it red, and then that will obviously go here. So we're going to reload this, and we got error because we have a 500 here. Let's reload it again. Success because we have a 200. Good. Now, so that we have to keep refreshing the page, why don't we just stick a button up here and say on click wibble. There we go, and wibble. I use wibble a lot, by the way. It's just a random word. And then we can put this in a function. Oh, why did I do this? Okay. Now we have a button-driven AJAX call, which will either success or error. What you might find more interesting here is, instead of having the message success, we could use this, which is the response, and we could stick the response into the alert. And obviously in this case, the response is literally just a plain text call, and I can show you that as well in the browser. That's literally the raw response is hello world again. So if you had a proper REST API where you're dealing with JSON, then obviously you're going to have to do other things. But for this purpose, you're going to just see plain text being inserted, which is exactly what we want or need for this demo. So let's again refresh. We should have a button we can use to trigger, and it will either error or succeed based on what's going on in the network tab as well. And what we can do to make this slightly more interesting is obviously actually include this random number, so that we see that it's all dynamically generated. And one thing we're also going to do is set a timeout to get rid of the message after a certain amount of time, because we don't want to have to manually dismiss everything all the time. So we create a little function here, and we'll set it for 2 seconds, and we're going to say this new alert dot alert that allows you to do other control things inside the generic alert function, and that subfunction is close. So this is an alert object. This is a jQuery function that handles other sub-functions within the alert space, and our function that we're calling here is close, and we're going to reload that and run it. And now we have a automatically disappearing, dynamically generated AJAX call triggered Bootstrap alert. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.